We get Florida, establishes the western boundary of the Louisiana Purchase. The Convention of 1818 with Britain establishes the northern boundary of the Louisiana Purchase, as well as joint occupation with Oregon, which will be a problem later on when we want to gain access to it. So thank you. Right. Yeah. Question? No. Okay.
Who's responsible for the Florida Purchase?
Who's responsible for the what?
Florida Purchase.
John Quincy Adams, who was the Secretary of State. He was an amazing Secretary of State. He was a horrible president. All right. The Monroe Doctrine, John Quincy Adams was also responsible for the Monroe Doctrine. This is something that students, it befuddles them all the time. What the hell was the Monroe Doctrine? All right, there are essentially three prongs. Well, first let me give you the context. The context is after the Napoleonic Wars, again. Also, the Holy Alliance in Europe, the fear was that European monarchs wanted to reinstall monarchy in their former colonies, potentially Latin America. So the Brits want a joint declaration with us, non-colonization, of the new nations in the Western Hemisphere, like Venezuela, Argentina, Mexico eventually, around this time, because they wanted to trade with them. John Quincy Adams brilliantly says, you know what, the Brits are going to back us up with their ships anyway. Let's make this statement independently and sort of make our teenage nation look like it's an NFL player. No one really believes it. All right. So it basically is non-colonization. No further colonization permitted in the Western Hemisphere. This one you can write down. Non-intervention. You are not to intervene in nations that are newly independent, nor will America intervene in European affairs. You stay out of our hair, we'll stay out of your hair. Okay? And then also, it makes it clear we support democratic, popularly supported governments here in the Western Hemisphere, whereas Europe is a place of monarchy, and that's different than us, and we don't like it, and we don't want to hear it. Okay? So those are basically the ideas. So it really sets up America to be sort of a protector of the Western Hemisphere, but we don't take it so far as Teddy Roosevelt takes it later, which is we will go into the country and go into the customs house and make sure no one messes with you. There is sort of a veiled kind of, we are the protector of the Western Hemisphere, stay out. Okay? Questions? All right. Legal nationalism. Pro-federal government as well as pro-business decisions. All right. So some of these decisions, if you guys have the AMSCO book, these are all in your AMSCO book. I'm sure Schmidt went over this, but Marbury versus Madison, judicial review. It's the first case that establishes the right of the Supreme Court to declare a federal law as unconstitutional. Okay? Fletcher versus Peck and Dartmouth versus Woodward both basically declare state laws unconstitutional, as well as reinforcing that states cannot mess with the sacredness or sanctity of contracts. If you remember, Dartmouth College was a private institution. They wanted to change the contract to make it public and less monarchical and whatnot. Unfortunately, you guys cannot sit. I'm so sorry, but you're going to have to you can't block the door. It's a fire hazard, all of you guys. So you'll either have to make an aisle or figure out something. Okay? Thank you. McCullough versus Maryland, the bank. The power to tax is the power to destroy. Federal law over state law, and he establishes the constitutionality of the Bank of the United States in this case. Andrew Jackson will ignore him now. Gibbons versus Ogden, federal control over interstate commerce. That was about traveling the waterways of the Hudson River between New York and New Jersey. That only the federal government has a right to regulate interstate commerce. You guys know interstate, between states, right? Intrastate, within the state. So like if you get confused on the AP, just kind of do that. Okay, sorry. All right. And then Cohen versus Virginia, the Supreme Court can review state court decisions. So all of this to say, all of these cases, federal government reigns supreme, business contracts are sacred. Not much has changed. Although we're now in a states' rights reinvigoration movement. Tea party. All right. Anybody good? All right, gotta move on.
Wait, John Marshall was pro-business, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Marshall, like Alexander Hamilton, felt, and there's a lot of merit to this. You cannot have a strong nation without strong economic underpinnings. If business is in chaos, and if a state could basically say, "Oops, you bought that house. I'm sorry. It now belongs to somebody else," or "Oops, you started a business. We think it's not. All the Starbucks have to go away by tomorrow. It's not going to be good for business or us." All right. Growing sectionalism. So after the Revolutionary War is basically gone in all of these states. It's illegal. You've got banking, manufacturing, etc. You have, the West. They want internal improvements. They are sort of the food basket of the country. They're sort of in between. In some of these states, you have Southern sympathizers, but in the end, ties between the West and the Northeast will be stronger than ties between the West and the South when it came to decisions about who to join in the Civil War. And then you've got the South that is really so intensely linked to the institution of slavery at this point for their prosperity. So very different interests. All right. Good old Missouri Compromise of 1820. Balance was 11-11. Free or non-slave and slave states. Missouri comes in, wants to be a slave state, brings up the whole issue of slavery that had been so carefully avoided during the Constitutional Convention, right? Hot potato issue. Just chuck it into the future, right? So essentially, what do? I'm going to come back to this in a second. A senator named Talmadge basically puts forth an amendment, and he says, okay, well, the compromise will be we'll allow slavery in Missouri, but then after that, no more slaves can be brought in, and then all of the slaves that were born into Missouri after this point, or that were in Missouri at this point, are freed by the age of 25. It fails, okay? So it's kind of one of those last-ditch efforts. I don't know if it would have worked. All right, going back to this, what the compromise does wind up being is that Missouri comes in as a slave state. Maine is basically carved out. It was part of Massachusetts territory. It's carved out as a free state. The balance is 12 and 12. It's a Band-Aid, but you get this southern line where below the 3630 line, or rather above the 3630 line, the southern border of Missouri, no slavery will be allowed to exist north of that. Okay? That later will be overturned in the Dred Scott decision. In the Kansas-Nebraska Act, my bad. All right, so, and actually both of them. Okay, good. Got it? All right. Stretch.